There are, of course, limitations to how successful we can be or how high we can go. But very often the constraints that we think about are not real. They're imaginary. Professor Martin Seligman of the University of Pennsylvania conducted some research on learned helplessness. For example, if a group of people were being bothered by a loud noise and they tried to stop that noise but were not successful, after a few attempts, they would stop trying. Later on, even if they could influence it and if they could stop that noise, they wouldn't try because they had learned to be helpless. In fact, there's an interesting experiment that was conducted with monkeys. 20 monkeys were put in a cage and ripe bananas were hung from the top of the cage. And of course, naturally the monkeys wanted to go after the bananas. But the researchers had put a man on top of the cage with a hose that could throw ice-cold water on the monkeys. So every time the monkeys tried to climb up, the man would just throw cold water on them. And after a while, the monkeys associated their attempt to go after the bananas with having ice-cold water thrown on them. So they stopped trying. In response, the researchers removed the man and the ice-cold water from the top of the cage. But the monkeys wouldn't try because they associated those bananas with ice-cold water. As a next step, the researchers decided to remove one of the monkeys from the cage and replace him with a new monkey who had never experienced ice-cold water being thrown on him. This monkey, when he was put on the cage, obviously tried to go after the bananas. There was no man on top of the cage. There was no ice-cold water on top of the cage. But when this new monkey tried to go to the top of the cage, the other monkeys pulled him down because they associated going for those bananas with having ice-cold water dropped on them. One by one, the researchers removed all the old monkeys from the cage and replaced them with new monkeys, none of whom had experienced ice-cold water being thrown on them. Yet, none of those monkeys tried to go for the bananas because they had learned to be helpless. It was based on a past experience, and that past experience wasn't even theirs. They had only heard about it. But they chose not to. All of us place constraints upon ourselves that are not real. Think about it. What are your goals? What are your dreams? And what's stopping you from getting there? Make a list of all the issues that you think stand in the way. Make a list of all the things that you want to achieve. And one by one, think through them. What are the constraints that are stopping you from achieving them? Are they real? Or are they constraints that are imaginary, that are placed upon you by yourself or by somebody else through your past experiences? There is only one way to work through your constraints, and that is by trying.